Hello and welcome again to Charles Kelly Money Tips. Hope you're doing well out there today. Thanks for everyone tuning in on Facebook Live and also to my listeners on my Money Tips podcast, which you can find on iTunes and Stitcher and also on moneytipsdaily.com. Today you may have heard in the news, well, if you're abroad, as many of my listeners are, you may not know this, but the Prime Minister today said he would suspend Parliament, and this is in the run-up to Brexit. And Boris Johnson has committed to leave on the 31st of August, but there are a lot of MPs on his own side of the party and in other parties who want to block this, and either block it by saying we don't want to leave without a deal, or just block it altogether. And yesterday we talked about that many MPs have got together and signed a charter where they're going to block a no-deal Brexit. So Boris Johnson has responded by announcing that Parliament will be suspended in September and reopened on the 14th of October when there will be a Queen's speech. It's not unusual to suspend Parliament for a few days, but this is seen as a move to definitely block the Remainers or the Remoaners from stopping the country leaving the EU. So it's really like a war. It's like a civil war in Parliament at the moment. And in response to that, the pound slid further. The pound now only buys you $122. So $1.22 and €1.10, which is very low. I mean, I remember buying dollars when they were nearly 180, 190. And I would suggest it's a good time to buy dollars when you see it rise above 160, 170, because you can always exchange dollars back to pounds, or when you go abroad, it's quite a useful currency to have. Incidentally, in many countries, they don't like pounds. They will accept dollars or your own currency. So it's always useful to have dollars, but it's not a good time to buy dollars now with the pound so weak, and it has been for the last 2 or 3 years. So shares have been up and down. The FTSE was down, then it went up, and it's been all over the place. Wall Street has recovered from Fridays and had a bit of a drop yesterday as well. But things are not looking great in the markets at the moment. We've got all sorts of problems around the world: trade wars, Brexit, the Amazon. I mean, what's going on in the Amazon? They still haven't got anybody in there because the Brazilian president doesn't want to accept aid. And every day, size of football pitches are burning like every minute, and this is precious rainforest wood. This is not just some manufactured wood. This is the rainforest. This is the lungs of the earth, and I just don't understand why they're dithering over this. It just seems tragic. So anyway, that's another subject off the subject there. But just another reminder that you've got a couple of days to go in the UK for the PPI Payment Protection Insurance deadline to get your claim in. Just wanted to mention that. And I've also been watching what's going on in Hong Kong, but I'll just come back to that in a second. Word of the day is index. Now, we all talk about indexes, don't we? We say the FTSE 100 index, the Dow Jones index. What are these indexes? So that's my word of the day. What is an index? Well, an index really is just an indicator or a measure of something in technical terms. And in finance, it typically refers to the statistical measure or change in securities markets. Now, this could be financial markets, bond markets, stock markets, and it could represent a hypothetical basket of securities in a market. Now, an index is just a measure, really. So the S&P, the Standard & Poor's 500 index, is the US aggregate bond index. That's an index of 500 shares. Then there's the US aggregate bond index. They're common benchmarks of the stock and bond market. So the S&P 500 index would contain the top 500 companies. The Dow Jones index contains the top 30 American companies. And all they do is just measure the price, the share price of those companies. And so today it might be 25,000. Tomorrow it might be 24,500. The FT 100 index is the same thing. It's the FTSE 100 index is the top 100 companies in the UK, and then you've got the FTSE 250 index, the 250 top companies, and it's just the price of those companies measured by the respective indexes, and it gives us an idea of where the market is going. So by looking at those various indexes. Now you can't buy it directly into an index, but you can track an index with an index tracking fund, which is quite a good way of tracking investments and the market without necessarily going into each individual stock. So if you wanted to buy an index tracking fund, you can do that, and it's considered to be better than some of the managed funds or unit trusts or mutual funds. Some of the index funds have done better. I wouldn't go into an index fund right now because the market is quite high, but it's a good way of getting into the market without having to research every share in that market. Of course, in an index tracking fund, you're just tracking an average sort of index and the growth in that index, and it can go down as well as up. Again, you need to sort of take financial advice on this. You can also track indexes through an ETF, an exchange traded fund, which we talked about a few days ago. So that's really what an index is. So when we talk about indexes, they're just a basket of stocks within a particular sector. Okay, so that's that. Now, I was just talking about Hong Kong at the moment. There's obviously a crisis in Hong Kong with all of these riots and that sort of thing. And apparently there's been a surge in inquiries about going abroad, emigrating to other countries, particularly Australia, Canada. I'd say not so much the UK, but for most of these countries you need to qualify under sort of various categories, points based, maybe through your job, but it's not that easy. Australia might say, we need electricians at the moment, we need doctors, we need teachers, for instance. Every country wants those kind of jobs. Nurses is another one, but it can come and go. It can blow hot and cold. So one year they might need a lot of nurses, then they don't need so many nurses, then they need physiotherapists, then they don't need physiotherapists. So it's not easy, and it can take quite a while to go through this process. So many people in Hong Kong are sort of panicking. Is China going to invade and take over everything and block everything and lock everything down? So many of the people, particularly with money, are panicking about what could happen, because Hong Kong has been seen as a stable place for investing, a stable place for business. But now, is it so stable with Chinese troops, just over the border, all backing up, ready to move in and take over? So it could be another sort of communist takeover, like when the Russians sort of moved in on the Czech Republic, or more recently, in Crimea, they just sort of took it over. And this is what communist governments can do, because we've got to remember that China is a communist, Marxist kind of regime. Although it does business now, it will not stand for any sort of talk of we can do what we want, this is the democracy. They're not going to stand for that, so they could move in. So there is another way of people with money getting passports or getting residencies or citizenship in countries without necessarily going through all these hoops of, how old are you, what's your job, what's your health like, can you be an engineer? Well, I'm not an engineer, I'm a businessman. Well, no, we don't need businessmen at the moment. There's another way of getting around this and getting residency or passports or citizenships in countries, particularly in Europe, where your money will be safer and it's a safer haven and there's a proper rule of law, and that's called the golden visa. Have you heard of this golden visa? It's like, comply with this monetary requirement and we'll give you a visa and fast track your application. Now applicants can, I'm particularly focusing here on Cyprus for it because it's very interesting. You can get a golden visa in Cyprus, which is a full member of the European Union, through investment in real estate, in property. And the program is from what I've looked at, is one of the fastest ways of getting a visa in Europe. Effectively, you're buying yourself residency or citizenship within the European Union. It's not just about Cyprus, it's about the European Union. And this golden visa is one of the fastest and simplest investor visa programs in Europe. You've got investor visa programs in Britain as well. If you've got a couple of £1 million, you can get a golden visa to the UK. but it's a bit more flexible and faster in Cyprus. And from as little as 300,000 euros, you can gain Cyprus residency permit through that. And that can be invested in property. You don't even have to live in there. The residency visa is granted within 2 months. So if you're in Hong Kong and you're panicking, maybe this is the thing for you. And it can cover the whole family. And it can include parents of both the main applicant and spouses, plus dependent children up to the age of 25. Now, in the UK, dependence means under 18. So anybody who falls over 18, that's it, you're out. You can't come in as a dependent on a dependent visa. And the permanent residency program offers ease of travel throughout the European Union. It requires just one visit to Cyprus by all the family once every 2 years. So it's not like you have to be there all the time. And some countries are a bit more strict on this. And so you just got to go there within every couple of years. And the investment may be made by a company. So it's a lot more flexible than, say, putting it in your own name. And for which the main applicant and spouse can be the beneficial owners. The investment can be a maximum of 2 properties. It doesn't even have to be in one property. So you might be thinking, well, can I find the right property for that? Yes, you can invest it in 2 properties. And the properties must be purchased brand new. So it must be a new build. The idea is to stimulate growth within the country. Now, there is a passport visa, is also a similar thing where you can get a Cyprus passport almost immediately, and that requires an investment of 2 million euros into real estate. But you don't have to buy just one property. You can buy a block of flats, you can buy a block of apartments and rent those out. So it can be can be an income producing property in Cyprus. But I'll be talking more about this and writing more about this. It came up recently because of the Hong Kong situation. So you can get these golden visas in other European countries as well. So if that's something that interests you, then contact me. Contact me through Facebook, or drop me a line at charles@charleskelly.net. Now, obviously, if you haven't got the money to invest, you're wasting your time. You can't do it through you can't get a golden visa if you haven't got any gold, if you know what I mean. Countries put these visas on, make these visas available for people that have money because they want to attract investment into the country. It's normal. Britain does it. Lots of countries do it. America does it. If you've got the money, you can get the visas. That's a fact of life. You can fast track your way through. But Cyprus is particularly flexible in that the amounts are much lower, and it's very, very flexible within their terms, and it can include the whole family. So that's all about the golden visas. As I said, the main news today is that the pound is sliding on the announcement that Boris Johnson will suspend Parliament in order to push through Brexit. And we talked about what it is an index. It's a measure of something in finance. It refers to the statistical measure in a securities market, whether this be stock market or bonds. Okay, thanks for listening, and thanks for everyone who tuned in on Facebook Live. This is Charles Kelly bringing you money tips to help you save, earn, invest, accumulate and enjoy more money.